Hey, what's up everybody? Rob Marzullo here, Ram Studio Comics. Welcome back. So in today's video, I want to try to draw a dynamic pose, or a pose coming off the page towards the viewer, so a little bit of foreshortening. But I want to talk about using perspective grids. So all this really is a 1-point perspective. This is a vanishing point, and I just held Shift click and drew out some lines and change the colors. So pretty easy to do, and then as you do these, you can save them or do whatever. But and obviously this software has perspective rulers, but I want to show you how establishing a basic feeling of space on the page might help you to draw your more complex characters. So let's make sure this is an empty layer here. And so I've got this idea that I want the character coming out from the page or whatever towards the viewer. So lots of ways to kind of start this. You could start with the head. A lot of artists recommend just starting with the upper torso. So let's just start with the head, and I'm going to make it pretty large by comparison. So here's this big old floating head. And what I want to do is think about, where the upper torso is going to be. And, you could do this with all sorts of shapes. It could be an oval here, and then an oval coming back this way, or half oval, almost like an egg cut in half, something like that. And then you can figure out where the waistline is going to be. So let me try to, so we've got a lot going on here. So I'm going to try to illustrate this with different colors to make it easier for you to see. And I can also take these other lines and knock them back so they're not so in our way there. You just want like I said, the feeling of depth on the page. So whatever helps you to achieve that. So let's go ahead and figure out where the pelvis is going to be. So if we take this and we got to imagine that this is getting hidden quite a bit from the upper torso. So let's say we're just going to start with something. This doesn't mean it's the exact right spot that it's really going to go there. We just need to make a mark. We also need to figure out where our limbs are going to go now. I'm going to kind of make it a bit easier on myself and just say, what if the arms are kind of going back into space? So they're flying at us real fast. Maybe one's a little higher. Yeah, they kind of look the same. I'll change them as I go because you don't want them, entirely even, or maybe you do. It's just up to you and whatever you're trying to imagine, I guess. But then we're going to bring one leg out. Notice I'm using curves. I'm not using straight lines. I guess here I did a little bit, but you can get away with this like lightning bolt kind of thing. That helps you kind of envision the way that the anatomy is going to attach later, or the forms, I guess, and then the anatomy. But so basically you've got this leg coming up, this one receding back into space. And again, this is all subject to change. So there's our step one. Let's go ahead and, oops. Step uno. Just like that. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take this and refine it a little bit more and add some forms over top of our very basic stick person. So we've got to think about hand expressions. Maybe they're got their hands kind of pointed off to the side. Maybe they're pointing back. Just do whatever you have to. Try to get hand expressions in with shapes like this at first, just to kind of throw it in rather quickly and expressively. So think about the gesture of it. So you might throw in the side of the hand like that and just a couple fingers shooting off to the side. The more you can kind of stage this work and slowly add to it, the better, I think, so that you don't immediately jump into details. So, collarbones can be here. We're going to make this a female character. So I'll give her the mammary glands. And here's the tricky part too, because we got to think about where the solar plexus is going to be. And then do we see part of the abdomen or the stomach muscles as they come down like this? And then again, where does that pelvis kind of line up by the time it recedes back into space? It may actually appear to be way up on the side of the breast area. So again, this is where all these lines are subject to change, and you just have to allow that to happen. So for a leg, I'm just going to get in a basic shape. Doesn't mean it's the right shape, just a shape to get started. Another shape like this, and again, we're going to extend this one back, and we're probably, we could say that we're going to see the bottom of the leg like this, for instance. But what ends up happening there is now it's not going with the perspective. It actually shifts. Just by doing that, the character is going more like this. And we could say the character is kind of doing that anyways. And it depends on the shot if that matters, if you make that change. But I think if we do this just right, we shade this leg back, maybe even tuck it up a little bit more, we can still give the illusion that she's going with this perspective like that. So that's what I'm going to shoot for anyways. Now, with the shoulders, the arms are probably need to be a bit longer, but I'm actually perceiving that they're going back perspectively. So another thing to think about is as you're drawing this back, not just to draw it out to the side on the canvas and let it fall where it may. You can do that, and after you get better and better, you'll start to do that naturally. But in the beginning, if you're not ready for that, keep in mind that you can still use perspective like this. And the more that arm is receding back into space, the more this is going to help you. So you can still use the idea of a vanishing point, no matter where that is. It doesn't have to go back to this horizon line, wherever that sucker is. I can't see it now, but so hopefully you understand that any of these limbs can have their own perspective, and that'll make things a bit easier for us. So let me try to demonstrate that really quickly. I'll just copy and paste this. That way I don't have to redraw it, even though it's not that big of a deal, but I'll just add a new layer and show you what I'm talking about. So say I want this perspectively to go way back, or even further, like this, a very extreme perspective going back. So I might converge this information and say, well, here's my vanishing point. I don't want the hand to go any further than that. It's going to be this little hand at the very end of that. And I can use perspective lines, in a sense, to figure this out. And coupled with the idea that you can figure out the distance of something, the halfway point, we'll say, by going like this. So say that this is the area that this arm resides in. We can go from here to here, here to here. There's our halfway mark. Looks kind of silly, but what it tells you is that when you go to draw an arm like this, and you know that they're roughly the same. I think the forearm's a little bit longer. Well, I guess the upper arm is when you attach the shoulder, but depends on where you're measuring it from, I suppose. But so say this is your arm, your basic rudimentary arm. So now you know if the halfway point is way down here perspectively, then you got to bring this information way down here before you show the segment to the the elbow or whatever. So just keep that in mind. These little, they probably look a little bit confusing at this point, but those can help you kind of place some of these bits of information. We're going to make it a little bit easier and go with this right here. Let's kind of reattach all this together and keep on going. So now let's soft erase this. Actually, let's make one more copy. So our first version was this right here, pretty silly, to this, a little bit closer, starting to make some sense. And then we're going to copy this again. Thought I copied it, apparently I didn't. And call this step 3. And let's soft erase this back. So now we could probably get rid of the grid pattern if we wanted to. I'm going to leave it there. I guess I'll get rid of these big blocks there. I don't need those anymore. So just what I want to show you is that the grid pattern helps you to kind of feel some space on the page and not just work off a blank white canvas, because it's very easy to make mistakes off a blank white canvas. So if you're new to drawing, then it probably makes a lot of sense for you to establish some sort of perspective grid. So now I'm just going to throw in some what I call fake anatomy, because I always get people telling me my anatomy's off, so I just fake it apparently. But I think we all do until we get to some amazing degree with our art where we actually know where every little segment and muscle goes in the body. And don't hold yourself too accountable like that. Look at lots of styles where they just let the chips fall where they may, but they come up with something expressive and fun and creative. So just allow yourself to think like that. I think it's better. And I shouldn't have put the hand so straight right there because it's a surefire way to make a good hand look like a bad hand. Take advantage of the dynamic bends of the body, you know, like why make it straight when the hand can go down like that and look a lot more impressive. Okay, so I think it's better to try to draw the breasts as one shape at first. And I always have to redraw them because I always start way too round, and they're obviously not round. They're more teardrop. And these look pretty silly for right now, but we'll start with this and get it in place. And I think the trapezius, right? Trapezius is up too high, but again, we're going to keep maneuvering things around, so I shouldn't worry too much about trying to place all this information exactly where it goes. So let's just kind of make some decisions. Remember that lightning bolt? The lightning bolt is the front of the bicep and kind of the curvature of the forearm. So that's that little lightning bolt that we got into place there. And that's why it's such an important little technique. Same thing, kind of put that bend in there. I want to fight the urge to look over. Well, I guess I do want to look over at the other hand, but I want to fight the urge to make the exact same hand. And remember, if hands aren't your thing, then they're actually the easiest thing to get reference for, because you got a set just sitting there in front of you. And I'm sure somebody else will let you borrow their hands if you're nice enough to them. Ask nicely, I suppose. But the thing is like they're the hardest thing to draw, but they're the most readily available for reference. So, for instance, a pose like this, you could try to make a reference shot of this pose, but it's going to be a lot trickier than getting a reference for your hands. But then, like I said, the neat thing about hands is you got set right there. You just take pictures and pose them however you like. So basically just get something into place and try it a couple times on your own. And if it's not working, pull reference and implement it into the pose. So you don't have to start over. You don't have to keep redrawing. Just, use that method. A lot of artists, a lot of professionals do, probably most of them. So don't feel guilty about it. Okay, so here's this leg. This leg shape looks a bit strange. I think I just need to thin it up a bit. And then this one, I'm really going to push this back and up. And I'm just going to shade this in like this. So this will help me to show that I want this character really in a foreshortened pose. We'll see how I get rid of all that information right there and just try to push the character out a bit further. Now I can start getting rid of some of the construction lines that are in here. Start dropping out the perspective lines. Something like that. Okay, so just like that, we've got our pose going. Trying to figure out some kind of funky little hairdo here. All right, so now let's see how else we can edit this and make it a bit better. It still looks strange. It just doesn't feel right and dynamic. Now, the one thing that I want to really try to figure out is, like I said, the abdomen here. I might not even get I don't know if you can see it. Let me illustrate it with right here. I started to draw the soloplex or the upper rib cage like that. Okay, and the reason being is that from a straight on view, I'm used to drawing this shape, you know, something like that for a rib cage, right? So that's what's in my brain box from doing it over and over again. But we have to remember that from an angle like this, it might change altogether. In fact, you might not even get that stretched out W. Depending on the steep angle of the character, it might even just come across as a rounded shape like this. I think we are still going to get a little bit of that W, but I just want to explain to you my thought process and why you kind of get this memory of things and the way they are upright and forward facing, but those shapes change based on foreshortening. And that's why foreshortening is such a hard thing for a lot of artists to get. It's because all those shapes get thrown out the window, or at least get adjusted dramatically, or sometimes subtly. But let's go ahead and try to erase this back one more time. And so now I've got a lot of the anatomy placed. I've got this idea going. So I want to really push this information back. That was actually too far. Forgive me, I gotta adjust my screen. I get this very like washed out effect to my lines. I think I bumped up my contrast too much. But enough about my problems. Okay, so let's take this now. Let's do it again, and let's just move things around a little bit. Not with the red line either. Not with the green line. What the heck is going on here? Okay, I almost swore on this video. I was so close, so close. Okay, so what I want to do now is adjust this a bit more because I'm just not liking the way I place the anatomy. I mean, parts I like, parts I don't. So I'm just going to keep maneuvering it. Remember too, your overlaps are another great way to show that things are receding back. So as the shoulder is, you know, more prominent, it's going to help us to see that the arm is being pushed back. Likewise, the amount of space that it constricts down, or, you know, squashes down into perspective, whatever the right word is for that, condenses down into perspective. So things that are closer are going to appear larger, and they're going to take precedence in the scene. I was just trying to imagine what the material will look like right there. And again, this rib cage, something like that. I'm just going to go with this rounded, stretched out W. And then maybe hints of the stomach muscles, but not too much. And then we got to picture that the waistline, you know, like maybe there's a band. You know, we gotta use our landmarks to help us out. So one of the neat things you can do is just draw in some kind of like suit design. Even if this isn't part of the character, you'll see me often draw in some extra grid lines or whatever you want to call them, something like that, to kind of fill out the space. And that's why suit designs are actually such a great way to help illustrate these characters, because they really make things look like they're receding back into space just by doing these little, like for instance, if I bring the hip out like this, and I'm going to shorten this leg up a lot, it just looks way too massive. I'm going to bring this in, attach it here. I got to imagine that the waistline is up here, but then the, you know, maybe the opening for the leg is like that. So the waistline's going up, the hips are way back here. You know, if I was to draw through something like that for the, whoa, made one butt cheek way too small. But that's supposed to be like drawing through and actually seeing the lower pelvis. So we'll just say something like this. You got the rectus femoris, it's going to go like that, but I don't really draw that in on the women too much because they just tend to look too muscular unless you're doing like a She-Hulk or somebody. So I go with more of the silhouette of the leg, or I might do just a little bit of the side of the rectus femoris right there. And then same thing, this leg, but again, I want to really make this one condensed down and shaded. So something like that. All right, let's get this other arm in. And let me illustrate what I mean by the overlap here. So as each muscle goes back into space, the overlap becomes more evident. The overlap being the shoulder to the upper arm or the bicep right here curling in front of the lower arm or forearm. So each one of those overlaps become more apparent. So you'll notice a lot of styles where they just kind of say to heck with it and they draw big segments everywhere because it's easy to make it look like the character's receding back. It becomes trickier to do that when you don't kind of point out those overlaps so much in your style. So lots of ways to do it or think about it, but that's just something if you're really struggling to get foreshortening within your anatomy, just really think about those overlaps. Pay attention to those overlaps. All right, I got to try to do a different hand pose over here because if not, it's just going to look too plain. So I could bring these two fingers together and maybe curl the pinky, but every time I try to curl the pinky, I make it look funny. So let's just say the pinky's pointing down right here. And you see my hands are pretty bad, so I probably need to pull reference. And again, I'm trying to imagine that this arm is going back a little bit there, but it does look like the forearm is just simply going straight out. So, and you know, the problem is with that is because, again, I've got this overlap here, but then here the wrist is just connecting to the hand and it's straight like this. It's not receding into space. So let's try to adjust that. Yeah, that hand just looks really weird. Really weird. Okay, so again, we want to think about the round over occurring. And, you know, if you were to draw this dotted line, you know, the information is pointing this way. That is a horrible arrow. But you get what I'm saying. Hopefully it's pointing away from camera. And to get that, we need to attach the hand in a way where it looks like that. So, for instance, if we were to just put the hand like this, so this is the upper part of the hand, palm facing down, knuckles over here, thumb right here. You see by the way I attach the hand, looks broken actually. It looks like it's bending back too far, but this is probably a very doable pose, especially for women. They usually have a little bit more range of movement in their hands and wrists. I think anyways, maybe not. I could be wrong there. People are like, what? Yeah, women can all bend their hands completely backwards. I've seen it. But no, we'll do something like that. And again, that attachment is now to the side. It's coming like down this way and back out, which could look a bit strange, but it's forcing us to see it perspectively a little bit more, just by the area where we attach the line to the wrist like that. So that's the part or the point I want to make basically. Let's see if we can do it over here with a downward facing hand, maybe a fist. And so now we're going to attach the palm like this. We're going to show the second portion of the divide of the palm like this. See if I can make this make sense, I hope. Yeah, I think that reads all right. Probably reads just as well, if not better than the other one. So what happens is, again, the only reason this looks like it's attached and receding into space is because of the way we attach the lines to the opening of the wrist. So that's, again, pay attention to the overlaps. That's a big part of what makes it work. So I apparently need to work on my breast illustrations because these are quite off, but hey, time for some practice, I guess. You're not going to hear me complain about that one. Okay, so now let's put a face to this magnificent superhero woman. Superheroine, which I've never liked that term. Seems strange that that's the name for a superhero woman, but I'm not the one that comes up with this terminology, folks. I just draw the pictures, for Pete's sakes. Okay, so now the hair will do like, I was thinking, like I think I already mentioned, I was trying to come up with a pose for Miss Marvel because the new movie's coming out and I want to Try to draw some cool fan art, but she's got a different hairstyle than this. But if you look at the old Miss Marvel depictions, it's more like a buzz cut, some hair off the top like this. So that's really what this is going to be. I'll probably change the hands, maybe the arms a little bit. Like this could be power coming off. She could be like shooting power off to the side. Maybe there's a bird that's like in her airspace. I don't know, but yeah. So this is essentially how I would do it. So hopefully this gives you an idea or two of how you can draw your poses. Again, try those perspective grids. I think they help out a lot. I've been using them lately. I've actually been drawing more perspective scenes anyways. So if you start with the scene and you get a good idea of the perspective, God, these eyes are horrible, then you can work from that and just kind of keep going. So yeah, I don't know why I'm trying to sketch on a face real quick, because faces generally should be like where you spend more time, not less. But just trying to get a basic concept in place there. So yeah, so that's it. So remember, we started with our basic vanishing point and these little grid lines to establish a perspective. And from that, we're able to get to this. Remember that you can use your lines like this to really help envision that space. And when in doubt, check it against realism where you can. I mean, the tough thing is finding a shot that looks like this one, but you learn to find pieces, basically. So you might find just this leg on somebody with an intense like run or something like that, and you'll find just this face, and you got to kind of Frankenstein them together. So that's the gruesome reality of being a comic book artist. So but yeah, try it out, see what you get, and let me know what you think and what else you'd like to see in the future, and I'll make sure to get that on the schedule. So as always, keep drawing, keep having fun, and I will talk to you soon.